Okay, I'm currently doing the 40,000 kilometer service on the Nissan Navara here, and I thought I'd quickly do a video about changing the fuel filter because it's something that is often not done by the DIY home service guy, and so it's not particularly complex. There's a few steps you have to follow to make sure things work out well. But it's worth doing. I change mine every 20,000 kilometers, which is probably it's what the service manual recommends. It's probably more often than I really need to, considering the diesel quality in New Zealand is pretty reasonable. There's not a lot of contamination. I did cut open the previous fuel filter that I changed, and it still looked pretty clean, and there was only a tiny bit of water in the bottom, but that wouldn't have been a big deal anyway. So if we have a quick look at this, you've got the fuel filter here that gets replaced. It's got a contamination sensor screwed into the bottom of it that is connected there. You've got the feed pipe from the tank of diesel coming in there, and you've got the tank going to the the pipe going to the engine on that side, and you have got the little hand pump unit at the top, or the primer, I guess is what they call it, at the top, for when you change it to fill the new filter up with fuel and pressurize the line so the car will start the first time. Yeah, so basically when you change the fuel filter, one thing to watch out for, because these cars don't have a pump in the fuel tank, they only rely on the high pressure pump of the engine to suck the diesel all the way through the lines through the filter into the engine. So this line here, the feed line, is the only one we're going to disconnect, and the only reason that we're going to disconnect that really is so we can plug it so that the diesel doesn't run back into the tank from the line, and that either means that it's hard to reprime, so you're standing here for a long time squeezing this primer waiting for it to go stiff, or alternatively yeah, so that's, and sometimes you have trouble getting the engine started as well if the line completely drains back. So how I do that usually, that you can clamp these pipes, although it is a fairly stiff pipe because it's meant to withstand the vacuum of the engine sucking the diesel through. So I find it a bit hard to clamp. So I just have a punch. What do you call this? A drift punch. This one is just one that I made myself many years ago for drifting some holes through some steel, but it's just a tapered piece of steel that's relatively smooth. So what I usually do is I just yank the pipe off and then shove this in there as quickly as I can to prevent, and it probably doesn't prevent any kind of drain back. So at that point you want to get the filter changed so you can get the line back on and start pumping it. But yeah, so we're going to use that to block the line. Then we're going to use the this is just the oil filter wrench for basically just undoing the old filter. And then what I also find useful is this little line here. I just clip out of the way and I bungee cord that out of the way. But yeah, let's get started. So the first step is going to be undo the plug for the sensor, and then push it down so that it hangs right down underneath the filter, because that has to rotate as the filter is going to rotate. And so the other thing I do as well is I've got a bunch of rags here, and usually what I do is I make the cable hang down, and then I put a bunch of rags around it, and that's the first step basically. So yeah, I'll just put the camera on the tripod and then I'll get started. Okay, here we go. So the first step is this little pipe that is going to be in the way of removing the filter. I'm just going to I'll just use a bungee cord to get that out of my way. Then we need to unplug this. So a little flat screwdriver, usually I could just do it with my finger, push down on the little tab and bring the cable down so it hangs straight down from the bottom of the filter, like that. Grab a bunch of rags, and now I'm going to just stuff those around the bottom of it, so any diesel that does spill gets caught rather than dirtying up my nice clean engine bay. I'll stuff a bunch down this side as well. Okay. next step is a pair of pliers to just, it's just got a quick release clamp on there, so I'll just grab a pair of pliers quickly. On that little diesel feed pipe, I'm going to move the clamp down the pipe. Then I am going to give the pipe a wiggle. I might have to use the pliers again for this. I'm just going to give the pipe a little bit of a wiggle on the thing just to loosen it up. Okay, feels like it's coming. Get ready with the punch, or whatever you're going to use to block yours. Okay, here we go, and block it off, push that in. Okay, so now we are, a few drips coming out of this side, which is not obvious, so it's good to have the bit of cloth there just to catch them. Okay, now unscrew that way, which means we're going to have to hold it like this with this. Unfortunately, this kind of works the wrong way around for unscrewing here. I'll see if I can get in there. That's pretty loose. I might be able to undo that by hand now. Make sure that stays in there. Okay, I can undo that by hand. So we're just going to take that out, nice and easy. This is full of diesel at the moment, so just be aware that you don't want to tip it upside down too much. I'm just going to get an extra rag because I'm going to have to tilt it my way, so just make sure any diesel drips get caught. Okay, so we're loose, it's completely full of diesel. We're going to try and bring it, let's do that, bring it out this way, and you've got the old one out. Okay, now the next step, which I might do off camera, is we need to undo this white plug in the bottom and screw that into the new filter. So obviously tip out the diesel in this filter before you do that. Okay, I've used a tiny little bit of the diesel that came out of this to just lubricate, just put a little bit on this O-ring that's on here. With these filters, any kind of, even oil filters, it helps to put a little bit of oil on the seal. With these it helps to put a little bit of diesel on. It makes them seal a lot better. Okay, so we got the new filter, screw that in. To get this undone, all I did, sorry, camera on that side, all I did is I used you can use a big shifting spanner if you've got one. I just grabbed it with what I think the Americans call a line lock pliers. I'll show you what that looks like. It's one of those, just adjustable pliers. So I just made it on the, big enough to grip it comfortably, and just grabbed it and just gave it a turn. It's not super tight, so I'm just going to tighten this up again a little bit, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now the absolute number one thing with these filters when you replace them to make sure they seal properly, so I've got a little bit of diesel on my finger, clean diesel, just rub it all around this loose. See, the seal here is quite loose, so make sure you lubricate that seal. Otherwise what happens is when you screw it into the bottom of this, it twists the seal and it doesn't seal properly, and then what happens is you get air leaking into the system overnight, and you usually have trouble starting it first thing in the morning. It's also pretty common in New Zealand for aftermarket filters to not seal as well as the originals. and so most people here tend to stick with the originals for these ones. Okay, wire goes back down, filter goes back in, get it started. And now with this we're basically just going to go like an oil filter. You're just going to go hand tight. I'm just going to dry my hands off a little bit. Grab it and just hand tighten it. Okay, no more than that's required. Now as quick as you can, get the diesel line back on and put the clamp on. There we go. Clamp, grab the clamp, put the clamp in place so it's sealed. Now any diesel that may have spilled, we're just going to wipe everything nice and clean. Looking good, beautiful. All that's clean. Now maybe next step is we'll reconnect the sensor and put the little pipe back. Now you should be able to just prime it. Might take a while of priming it now before it's going to go hard, because you're basically filling whatever drained out of the pipe as well as the filter itself. But that's already feeling a little bit, yep, definitely working. Yeah, so I think that's okay. So yeah, car should start first time now. We'll, just need to fill some oil into the engine and then we'll see how that goes.